Have you seen that movie before or something? What's up? I'll come back to it in a second, all right? I'll come back in a second. I got to do a huge apology and just admit that I made a giant mistake. Is there anybody from the office, CSA, Server Student Action, representation? This morning, I was so excited about the Action Team launch party that I introduced the speaker. And I go, man, tonight's going to be awesome. It's going to be Action Team launch party out on Trinity Lawn and everything else. And I was like, yeah, I love it when students go around the world and just serve and love people. And I go sit down in my seat right down over there. And my phone keeps buzzing. And I am a respectful chapel attender. And I don't look at my phone most of the time. And at the end of chapel, I look at it, there's all these text messages that say, no, Woody, that's next Wednesday. So I want you to know that I gave early announcement for next week's launch party for CSA. All right, now back to the sermon. I'm such a knucklehead. I can't believe they hired me here. The movie Up, that very first scene that I showed you, basically give an example of an old crotchety man that didn't want to be bugged, didn't want help, and didn't want to be interrupted. Do we have any old crotchety men and women in this room? Some of you have their roommates are like, yeah, right there. How many of you like to do life on your own and don't want no help at all? Like, say no to the hand. I don't want your help, right? Have any of you ever been on the side of the road? I am guilty of this one. Have any of you ever been on the side of the road with a blown out tire or something like that, and you're trying to figure everything out, and where's the jack, and how do I get this up, and somebody comes along and says, do you need help? No, I got this, and they pull away, and you're like, no, come back, right? What I love about that Up scene is it kind of calls something out in me, and I hope it calls something out in you that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. And it's this. There is the temptation that each of us have in this space to want to say, no, I don't need any help. I got this. When the exact opposite is actually the truth. We don't got it, and we need so much help. Life would be so much more simpler if we just said, yes, God, I need your help. We did something different with our backdrops tonight. If you've never been to a Kaleo here in the fall semester, we are studying what? The Psalms. Yeah, we're studying the Psalms. And we've actually had 3 different backdrops up the last couple weeks. And those last couple weeks, those backdrops have said securely oriented, painfully disoriented, and surprisingly, yeah, I love it. And every week we've been reading a psalm and saying sometimes when you read the Psalms, all 3 of those kind of typologies or themes can be in a psalm, and they're really helpful when you read the Psalms. And sometimes there's a psalm that really seems to emphasize one thing. Last week we decided to emphasize surprisingly reoriented, and we said that there are psalms with surprises. The psalm we read last week was Psalm 90, if any of you can remember that. But psalms with surprise exist, and they really help us to kind of be on the lookout, have our eyes open. And what it says in Psalm 90 verse 1 is basically, surprise me in the daybreak, surprise me in the morning. And it's kind of like coming out of a real painful season into a season of like, God, where are you? I need you. And those surprises that come. Last week, the Soul team, that's you guys, that's your peers that represent you, showed me this great video, and I was so excited about the sermon, I forgot to show it, so I told them I'd find a way to get it in this week. And there's this little 3-second video that, when you think about Psalms of being surprisingly reoriented, it's kind of like what Jesus was talking about in the New Testament, to have the mind and the spirit and the heart of a little child, of anticipation, excited. I had never seen this, but I felt like I was the only one in the room that hadn't. Have you seen a little boy open up a package and find an... Right? Okay. If you're like me and you've never seen that again, it's got to get really quiet because I want you to hear his excitement, all right? Really quick. So, Psalm 90, last week, verse 1. God, surprise me. God, surprise me in the daybreak, in the new morning, surprise me. I really tried to live that way this week. And I got to be honest, I failed miserably at moments, and at other moments, I'm like, oh, God, thank you. I see that. I'm not alone. I'm not constantly living in painful disorientation. One of the other things I said last week that's just good to bring up again this week is I talked about makeup. And no, I don't wear makeup, but I know about makeup because I have a wife and a daughter. And I talked about cover up. And I said the Psalms are not cover up. Pretending like life is miserable or my face is breaking out everywhere and I just cover it up. The Psalms can lament. The Psalms call out pain. The Psalms do not avoid the difficult, but it also reminds us to keep our eyes open because we have a God that surprisingly gets our attention. This week we left up one backdrop because we want to talk about secure orientation, what it means when we know God's got it together. We know that God's got us. We know that God will follow through. And creation's a big part of that. And so the best way to describe it is creation as evidence of God's love. If you got a Bible, some of you have been really following us and then trying to do your homework and look back at it. It was really sweet. There was a bunch of you on all the stairs tonight, well before we opened up. And I happened to walk by one of you, and your Bible was so marked up with so many colors and so many underlines. I'm like, I love a well-worn Bible. And I saw that person, I'm like, man, they really read their Bible. If you have a Bible, because sometimes I think we get used to really having screens and we don't. If you have a Bible, you should check if I'm telling you the truth and open up Psalm 147. And if not, maybe you go home, pull your Bible out and check it instead. Psalm 147 says this, praise the Lord. How good is it to sing praises to our God, for he is gracious and strong. And a song of praise is fitting. Do you know when you guys sing together, you're basically living out Psalm 147, verse 1. Psalm 147 has three distinct different sections, and in between each of the sections, there's kind of like a worship leader in between the psalm, and the worship leader is saying, how good is it to sing praises to our God, for he is gracious, and a song of praise is fitting. Tonight, whether you came in with midterms or heaviness about home life or heaviness about who your friends and your living situation is, or a heaviness around all the conversations and things around APU, or a heaviness about our world, or a heaviness about the political system of North America, do you know Psalms 147 says one of the best ways we can have the best security ever is to praise our God. It makes a difference. It really does. That when I am not doing well, by the way, you know how Psalm 90 says, surprise me in the morning. It's a prayer to God. Surprise me in the morning. Do you know how many times I get in my car to come to APU and I have already started on the wrong side of the bed? Just like, oh man, how many of you about 98% of the time wake up in the morning and go, oh man, I'm so tired, I didn't get enough sleep, right? Do you think God ever goes, I'm getting real tired of that, you need some sleep, right? Do you know sometimes when I know I'm at my worst, one of the best things I can do is just pick a song on my phone or on the radio and just start to praise God. If you are miserable, it is not cover up, it's just getting your attention in the right direction. Psalm 147 has a worship leader before it ever gets to a psalm of creation and what it means to be securely oriented. It reminds us that praise makes a difference. Verse 3, and I'm going to come back to verse 2. If some of you are thinking I'm skipping it, don't worry, I'm going to come back. Verse 3 says, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. He determines the numbers of the stars, and he gives to all of them their names. Brooke, leave that slide up for a second. Look at it with me for a second. Verse 3 and 4 couldn't be any more different, could they? In fact, it's kind of bizarre. It's like, hey, psalmist, why, when you wrote this, did you go from everyday, average, normal people, probably a lot like us, brokenhearted, God heals, and now we're talking about stars? That's weird. Psalm 147 does this a lot, all right? If you go home and read it and see if I'm telling you the truth or if I made this up, you're going to see that it talks about real life human experience, brokenhearted, those that are wounded, those that need to be healed. And then it jumps to the God of all creation, the one that can order the stars, name the stars, create the stars, can care about the big and the small. That if God is able to take care of all of that, can he not also take care of us? The Psalms of creation remind us, and they're visual reminders, that if God can do all of that, can't he do this? And it's a psalm of hope. When I talk about being securely oriented, I'm not talking about everything's perfect. I'm talking about when you're in the scriptures or your eyes are wide open and you're seeing the surprises or you're seeing creation, there's a God that reminds you that's basically saying, I got this and I got you. It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't look like it. The world looks to be upside down, but I got you. Remember I told you I skipped over verse 2 on purpose? I want to come back to it, and I didn't put it on a screen because I want you to hear it and think about it for a second. Let me read it to you. Psalm 147 verse 2 mentions Jerusalem and mentions the people of Israel. It says this, the Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the exiles of Israel. The Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the exiles of Israel. When that verse says builds up, that means something was tore down and destroyed. When it mentions the word exile, it doesn't mean life was perfect and God made it more perfect. It means they were living in captivity. What I love about Psalm 147, it is definitely a psalm of security, but it calls out how upside down life can be, feel, and really is sometimes. But it reminds us, our God knows the brokenhearted. Our God heals and binds up the wounds of those who need to be healed. And oh, by the way, he created all the stars, named all the stars, ordered all the stars, and takes care of all the stars. He can take care of you. I love this psalm. I need it so bad right now in this season with things that are just making my head spin. Listen to Psalm 147. It goes on. It says, great is our Lord and abundant in power. His understanding is beyond measure. The Lord lifts up the downtrodden. He casts the wicked to the ground. These two verses still do the same thing. It talks about the immensity of who God is and the understanding and all the things that God can do. But then it also talks about God lifting up the downtrodden. And one of the things you got to know, if you ever have a chance to do a class on Psalms or you start studying yourself, the Psalms aren't embarrassed to talk about the righteous and the wicked, which sometimes I'm really uncomfortable with because I just want everyone to be righteous and for everybody to get along and everybody to be really nice, because I think there's two things I'm afraid of. One is I might be the wicked, or two, like it's really hard when other people are just being mean to you. You wish they would get their act together and be kind to you. But here's what is happening in the Psalms. Have you ever been treated so miserably that what you're mad at is not just those that are treating you miserably, but you're mad at God because why is this happening and why are they getting away with it? Part of the Psalms, when it talks about being securely oriented, is that justice and righteousness will prevail and the wicked will not get away forever with what they're doing. I struggle with this one because sometimes I realize I might be the wicked. And sometimes when it's the wicked that are doing something to somebody else or doing it to me, I'm like, hurry up, God, smite them now, right? But if I'm back in my humble position of I am not the God of creator, I'm probably actually doing something more like this. God, I feel like the wicked are really after me. But even as I say that, God, will you search me and know me? What wickedness is in me? Because before I ever play God or judge anybody else, do something right in me, and in the process of that, also do something right in everyone, and God, make the world right. That's a hard prayer to pray over and over again when you feel like everybody is just ruining you. The Psalms promise that the wicked will not get away with it. Listen to Psalm 147 as it continues. It says, he covers the heavens with clouds, prepares rain for the earth, makes grass grow on the hills. Now, I know we're from Southern California, so we have no clue what rain is, but I want to talk about it anyways. California rain's not like this. I've lived in Southern California my entire life, okay? But I like to get in a car and drive to places that know how to do real weather. California rain is hilarious because it rains 1 hour one day a year. No, it's not that bad, but it feels like it. And what's weird about California rain is when it comes in, it's like one big massive rain cloud. It rains and then disappears. But I've been to a couple other states, and it's kind of cool. I was talking to a couple of students, and they were realizing as well, it seems like Montana does this, Arizona does this, Nevada, Utah, everywhere but Southern California, Colorado. Have you ever seen a storm cloud where it's like by itself and you can sit in a dry spot and you watch it just dump rain? I had a big picture. They may have already thrown it up there, but where you get to sit there and you just look at, that is the most beautiful thing ever, right? Our God does that. It's not an accident. It's not a happenstance. And what the passage says in here is it not just rain. It's the rain that creates the grass to grow green. In Southern California, we don't even know what green grass is either, but how fun is this? A photo taken during the daytime that captured the beauty of that water on that grass. Most bizarre thing in the world. What if the next time, because guess what? We are moving towards winter and then spring will come and we might have some weather. Do you know when you see rain, when you see grass grow, when you see something that even has the smallest bit of beauty, it should remind you that our God is not absent and that our God is up to something. So I didn't grow up doing a lot of hiking or backpacking or things like that. Because I've been at APU for a while, I've gotten to do a lot of things with different places like High Sierra and walkabout and stuff like that. But before I ever did, I went on a first trip with a crowd of friends. And they made me go up this crazy, really big, steep hill, and I hated every bit of it. I'm like, where is the couch? Why are there so many rocks? Why is there not a Slurpee 7-Eleven somewhere close, right? And after about an hour of hiking, and all I could do was stare at the trail in front of me and the hill up above and grumble and complain the entire time, we got to the top, and the people that I was with said, now turn around. I'm like, what? And I turned around. It was Kings Canyon National Park. And when I had gotten up to the top, they turned me around, and I looked at 3 different valleys of the most amazing beauty I had ever seen. Now, here's what's so crazy about it, is it wasn't just the beauty that did something in my soul. It was how small I felt. You know what's so weird about how we do life now? We are the masters of all of our own destiny. We can stay up all night long and basically say, God, I don't need your sun. I got fluorescent lights in my apartment or dorm. Or we can basically spend an entire day with one of these things over top of us called a roof and miss the sun come up, the sun go down, the stars, the clouds, the wind, and everything else. That sometimes what I realize in this security type psalm, this creation type psalm, is when I only live in a space where I am the master of my own destiny with people, with social media, with watching videos, playing video games, that I can start to feel like the world's out of control, I'm out of control, and I don't like anything. And when's the last time I've sat outside and realized how small I was and there must be a God and I must need that God? When's the last time you looked for God's touch of creation? I put a couple of these other Psalms because it gets even more specific. It says this, his delight is not in the strength of a horse, nor the pleasure in the speed of a runner. But the Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him and those who hope in his steadfast love. Now, straight up, I have never done this before, but I have a slide of an Arabian horse. First time ever I've shown a picture of a horse in a sermon before. I don't know why you're clapping, but I guess we'll figure that out in a second. Thank you for clapping for the horse. I've barely ever ridden a horse. I've never owned a horse. I've never really been around that many horses, right? But if you've ever been to a parade or anything like that, when you have seen a beautiful and strong horse, it's kind of shocking. Like when you go to a parade, if you've ever been to a parade or you've driven by somewhere with a horse or you've finally driven out of Los Angeles and you go by a farm and there's a horse and you pull over and you want to take a selfie with it or something, you start to realize, why does my head only come up to its shoulder and it's like way up there? When you see a horse after it's run, have you ever seen like does a horse have fur? Is it a coat of fur? Okay, all right, fur. I didn't know what it was called. Oh, it's hair. See, there is some professionals here, right? When a horse gets a lather from like running around, and it just looks like the most beautiful specimen of strength ever. That's the image I had in my brain when I read this. And it says, his delight is not in the strength of the horse. When I forget that God is the creator of creation, when I forget that I am not the master of my own destiny, do you know what I spend most of my life trying to do? Is trot, pound out, be strong, pulling the sled. And it is so exhausting. When am I going to finally give up and say, I am not in charge of my own existence? So I showed you a picture of a strong horse, not because I want you to be that. I want you to confess, and I want my own heart to confess, I am not the horse, the strength, the master of my own destiny, and I need the God of all creation to take care of me. Some of you are in midterms right now. Some of you are emotionally exhausted. Some of you are so run down it feels like somebody put a cement truck on your chest and your heart hurts from stress, or a cement truck on your shoulders and you can't carry anymore. Do you know the greatest thing that you could do according to this psalm? Is sit outside and watch a sunset and feel small and go, I am not God and I am sure in need of one. When's the last time you confessed to the God of all creation, I cannot do it. Help me. Are you starting to see why I showed that up clip at the very beginning? Instead of being a bunch of old, in charge, crotchety, grouchy people going, I got this, I don't need nothing. What if instead we were to unfold our arms and say, God, I need you like I can't even explain with words. God, you are the one that causes the sun to rise and the sun to set. I was not meant to stay up 62 hours in a row. God, help me to sleep. God, help me to have perspective. God, help me to see your law and your plan for life and follow it. God, help me to confess I am a sinner and can't save myself. Do you have any idea how freeing that is if you find time to do that and call out the God of all creation? It actually might feel like securely oriented. Dependency on God's steadfast love. There was 2 lines in there in that second verse. The one line says, but the Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him. And then it says, in those who hope in his steadfast love. My dad grew up, and this is very normal, so don't react to this either way, because as I've done life with people and gone to different places around the country, it all just depends on your family, and it depends on what you're given opportunities to do. But my dad never learned to swim. And I've met many students, same thing. If you don't have access to a pool or your family doesn't go to the ocean or something like that, there are lots that learn to swim and those that don't. My dad, as I watched him growing up, every time we were around water, he was always making sure that he would be able to get back to something. Like scared to death of water. And if you don't know how to swim, that makes sense. I grew up a little bit different. Even though my dad didn't like water, never grew up around it or learned to swim, he would always take us to the beach. He would take us to lakes and everything else. And I got super comfortable with water and loved it. Now, don't stereotype me, but yes, I loved surfing and I loved the ocean. I loved all that. But here's the issue. When you get so used to the ocean, you start thinking you have mastered it and you own it. You know what it's like when you go in the ocean and it's bigger waves than you should be playing with? Do you know what it's like when you're out really far away from the beach and say you have a surfboard or a bodyboard or something that helps you float and it gets ripped away from you and you're out there floating in 10-foot surf? You start to be afraid of that water like it could kill you and drown you. Can I give you a different terminology and a different understanding of fear? I don't think God wants us to look at him or water like my dad did, so afraid, doesn't want anything to do with it. And I also think our God doesn't want us to look at the creator, the one who's made everything, casually like I did as a 10, 12, 13-year-old going, I know how to swim, I can do anything. I want to give you a different language. When it says, really clearly. But the Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him. I want to put a word in front of that. The Lord takes pleasure in those who respectfully fear him. Have you ever walked up to the ocean when the waves are huge and stood there in awe of the power and the beauty, but you don't mess around and think you have any right to go out there and just goof off casually and flippantly go, this can't harm, hurt, or control me? You can have a respect and a fear and a beauty and an enjoyment of something when you understand your proper place to it. Here's why I love the Psalms of creation, because the Psalms of creation remind us we're not in control. If you feel painfully disoriented, if you are overwhelmed right now, you're actually in a great spot to say out loud. And by the way, I think this could be the most freeing thing for many of us in here when we're in the scriptures and we're reading Psalms going, God, before I ever even try to interpret what this passage is saying, I confess I am not God. I know my smallness. Bring me hope, bring me security, bring me wisdom, bring me direction. When I just take my cues on my own, what I want to do, or my cues from culture or cues from friends or others, God, I need your direction. Secure orientation when it comes to a place that we know we're the creation and we are not the creator, and so we're ready to see that differently. Can I make you try to imagine for yourself some of your own experiences? I did this with a group of students this week. I said, I want you to think of a moment when you had awe, when you're like, wow. I'll try to hint at some real quick right here, right in town, because if some of you are all of a sudden going, oh man, the only way you can understand the psalm or really get into it is if you like going hiking or backpacking or you're a surfer or something. I'm going to talk about stuff that I've seen in the last 2 weeks around town right here. The last 2 weeks, we had a tiny bit of weather. It's not real weather. It was a tiny bit of weather. And I saw 3 or 4 nights that I took pictures. I did not take this picture, but these were the colors. How many of you saw a sunset in the last 2 weeks that had red to it, that had orange to it, that had beauty to it? Here's my question for you. Did it come out of your mouth, wow, I absolutely recognize that I am not God, creator. Thanks for reminding me that you are in charge. Probably not. You're like, oh, that was cool. I'm take a picture and I'm on to my next thing, right? A couple of weeks ago, we had a full moon. And I remember coming home after a Kaleo during the full moon. I also did not take this picture. And I sat on the front porch when I got home and I just stared at the moon and I just went, that is so far away and I didn't create it. I can't get there. I can't see the backside of it. I don't know how many stars are behind it. I can't name all those stars. You are God and I am not. I know how small I am. Creator, save me. Give me security. I like walking to West Campus sometimes because I got to try to not, yeah. And I don't go the normal way. I like going the way that you have to walk along the curb and you almost get hit as people are turning into FEC. It's really fun. And it's not the prettiest section because the sprinklers don't hit anything, but occasionally, I didn't take this picture either, but occasionally I will find a little piece of beauty, a flower in a crack of a sidewalk or something small that I go, even in a cement jungle like where we live in the city, God's creation is revealed and catches me by surprise. Here's what I want to do. I want to read what Jesus has to say about this. And I kind of want you to close your eyes for a second. I want you to think of something beautiful, something in creation, something right here in Azusa, something you've seen in the mountains or at the beach, something that left such an impression on you that you felt small. Listen to what Jesus says about worry and God's creation. In Matthew 6, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life. Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they? With your eyes closed, can I say that over you as a blessing again? Are you not of more value than they? And can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to the span of your life? And why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all of his glory was not clothed like one of these. I have had the temptation, and I think I've actually been practicing it, to worry. We all know it. Nobody even has to hint at it. From the first week of school until even now, there is so much going on, and I need my God to help show me. Please bring security. Please bring understanding. Please bring life. And the only way that that happens is when I humbly come before the Creator and say, I'm not that. In everything you're going through right now, how often do you actually seek God? Or you just try to do it on your own, or you try to worry, or you try to be the fastest runner or the strongest horse. I'm tired of trying to be a strong horse pulling a wagon that's too big that I will never be able to pull. I saw a couple of you, and I was really proud of you. It was awesome. I saw a couple of you actually read the emails that the Office of Chapel Program sends out. Jeff Spencer is really creative. He does a lot to try to update everybody. And in it, the Kaleo section, it said, bring a blanket or a towel to Kaleo. And I saw a crowd of guys right out here that actually brought towels. And right now you're probably going, oh no, he's going to make us all learn how to swim. No. Here's the reason I had you bring a towel or a blanket, and don't worry, you're not in trouble if you didn't, and I believe you still can do this. When I was reading this and studying this, I had a chance to talk with Aston and Brody, and Brody and two others. Now's your cue, because we're going to do it a little bit different. Get out of here. And I said, I kind of want to do an ending worship set with no roof over our heads. I don't want to just show beautiful pictures. I want to be outside. And because UTCC is not a convertible, I can't get rid of this. But here's what I can do. I wish I could fly all of us to Star Rock in Bass Lake, or fly all of us to, I don't know, Patagonia, or fly all of us to somewhere, right? And see stars like this, like a Milky Way and everything else, like beautiful. Now I can't get you there, okay? In Azusa, we'll get like 8 stars. It probably looks more like this, which is okay. You know, it's all right. 8 stars, not this, but that, all right? So here's how we're going to end tonight. Aston, get up here. And 2 others. Here's how we're going to end tonight. They're going to sing 2 choruses. When they're done with the 2 choruses, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to give you permission to do something. The other half of the Kaleo band are out on the football field, the track, not DRC, not Dylan, right? We've asked them to turn off the lights around the track. And here's what I'd love to ask you to do. If you would be willing or want to or need some space to feel small so that you remember who your Creator is, so that you have a chance at being securely oriented, I want to give you permission or encourage you to literally go out to the track, the football field, the stadium, and lay on your back as the Kaleo band just acoustically plays worship over you. You can sing with them. I hope you can see 1, 2, 10 stars. Maybe someone with great eyesight will see 1 shooting star. But what I want you to do is call out to the God of all creation and say, I'm the brokenhearted. I'm the downtrodden. I'm the overwhelmed. God, save me. If you don't have a blanket or a towel, guess what? I don't think the grass is that wet. You can lay on your back anyways. And for those of you that are like, I got so much to do, I just want to run out of here. Here's what's great. You're an adult. You can choose to do what you want to. They're going to collect cards, and Kaleo's going to be over like within the next 2 or 3 minutes. But I want to double challenge you. Could 1 or 2 songs laying on your back and singing and praying and having a God conversation maybe be the best thing you do before you go study? I don't know. It's an offer. It's an option. It's not a have to. It's not a guilting. I think you live around a ton of people and too many roofs over your head and too much fluorescent lights. I want you to need and call on God because I know that's what I need. Will you stand with me? God, as we sing these two choruses, help us to depend upon you, to be securely oriented in you. God, would you save us like you saved Jerusalem? Would you build us up like you built the city up? God, would you save the people of Israel and bring them out of exile like we need to be brought out of exile? God, with the smallest flower, or the beautiful sunset, or a starry night laying on her back singing praise, help our anxiety, help our wrong kind of fear. God, help us to respectfully fear you and have awe of you. Would your steadfast love wrap a couple people up and help them feel secure in you? God, save us now. Save us always. Save us, I pray. Sing these two choruses together.